All right. So, as of recording, the NFL draft, at least the first round, starts tomorrow. Um,
Oh
so
wait,
it's
yeah.
probably by the time this. No, I'm saying that's probably by the time this goes out, most people will probably know what happens in the draft. Do you want to restart that?
No, I don't, I'm
I gotta
good.
talk myself.
I'm happy with this. It shows how much we planned going into this one. Yeah, no, the draft will have already happened, or at least, I mean, this will probably come out Saturday. So is that just the first round, or is that first like how many?
Most of it will have. Yeah, it will have all happened at that point. It's okay because um, we
This is
all know
good
that
planning.
mock drafts always get everything correct.
That's true.
Um,
That's
so
true.
we're gonna be yeah. So we're basically just like analyzing the draft already. This is what's gonna happen, so we're analyzing it.
Yeah, we know. We actually
We
got the
haven't.
list a day early.
We did. The NFL gave us a preview. Like we
Yeah,
know what we're talking
very,
about.
very kind of the NFL
Um,
to do.
Roger Goodell reached out specifically just to
To
the
the
Trick Play
to yeah
podcast.
yeah. He
He
was like,
wanted to give us
listen,
the leg up.
listen, guys. This is gonna help you guys out.
Yeah,
It's like, thanks,
he wants to
Roger.
see young growing podcasts.
There
Yeah,
you go. That's what he
Roger Goodell
really
is so
cares
cool.
about.
The Trick Play podcast. He's a
Roger
big fan.
Goodell and cool has never
Anyways,
been used in the same sentence.
we're breaking boundaries here.
Yeah.
Um, so Roger Goodell sent us a list, aka ESPN's most recent mock draft, and that's what's going to happen. So we're going to analyze it for you and break down every pick, how they fit with their team, and then if for some whatever reason that doesn't happen on draft day, then the teams are stupid and they should just go with what's here because that's easier for us.
Exactly.
Anyways, um, we can start with number one for this mock draft, and this one I can actually be certain that it's what's going to happen. Like this is actually we're analyzing, like all bits aside, this is what's going to happen. Caleb Williams at one to the Chicago Bears. Um, this has been what's talked about since the season ended, and even before that. Um, People have known that this is a pick. You get some contrarians closer to draft season saying, "Oh no, but what about Jaden Daniels going number one? I think he's actually a better quarterback." No, like come on, it's Caleb Williams. We've talked about Caleb Williams before, Simon, but how do you see him fitting with the Bears?
Well, I mean, it's the type of thing where its best quarterback goes to the team that needs a quarterback probably the most right now after trading away Justin Fields. And whether you think he's the best or not, he's going to be the guy who goes here. I don't imagine a world where Jaden Daniels goes first. I mean, if he does, this ends up being a much funnier episode to watch back on Saturday.
Yes.
But I I mean, at least in my own head, I don't see a world where it happens. I think even the Bears have pretty much, in what they've done leading up to the draft, have pretty much just said, yeah, we're taking this guy. This is our guy. We've made it
Yeah.
clear to him. We've made it clear to pretty much the whole world at this point that Caleb Williams is going to be a Chicago Bear, whether he likes it or not at this point. And I mean, from what we've seen, from what he said going into the draft season about whether basically if he was going to get drafted by a team he didn't want to play for, he would just not go. He was saying something along the lines of that. He'd just stay in college. Clearly, if things have gotten this far, he wants to go to Chicago.
Can't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, it's a little late now.
It's a little too
So
late for that.
yeah, but I think it's been well known that the first pick would be Chicago for a while now. So I think it's fairly obvious he
Yeah.
does legitimately want to go to Chicago. And I mean, I guess we'll see how that works out for him. It hasn't worked out very well for many of his predecessors, but
It's true. But I do think Chicago now is a much better landing spot for Caleb Williams than a lot of other people. You look at the not like these guys were much better quarterbacks, but you look at guys like Justin Fields, for example, gets drafted highly, but had literally nothing around him. You look at
yeah,
the offense the Bears have built for Caleb Williams. Um, Justin Fields, he had DJ Moore, but only in his last year. He didn't have terrible offensive line, which hasn't gotten that much better. But you get Keenan Allen in there. You also have not the number 7, the number 9 pick, which we'll get to later, but will probably be used to draft either a receiver or an offensive lineman. And that helps Caleb Williams out even more. If you get a guy like, likely Roma Dunze is the one that's been linked to them at 9, then that's an insanely good receiver core. And for a guy like Caleb Williams, who's is more talented than any quarterback the Bears have probably ever had in their franchise history, if he lives up to what he did in college. Obviously, that's a question mark for every player. No player is a perfect prospect. But Caleb Williams there's a reason he's been talked about as a generational kind of guy. He shows the kind of talent that you see from guys like Patrick Mahomes. And there's some worries about him not being able to. There's some worries about the fact that his last season wasn't as good as the season before, but that's mostly to do with the team around him. At USC being very bad. There's some worries about him not being able to play as much in structure as just kind of like freelancing around. But again, that was kind of done out of necessity, considering how bad the team around him was.
Yeah, and there's been conversations as well about his personality. That has been one that people have brought up recently, and I mean, especially going into draft when the off season has come, and pretty much every tweet that he put out or everything he says is getting monitored under like a. I mean, it's just the type of thing. Yeah, microscope, whatever. It's just the type of thing where, I mean, at least to me, you got to take a bit of it with a grain of salt. He seems like a very confident guy, and I don't really see how that's that much of a bad thing, especially considering you're going into a league where you are expected to have. I mean, the expectation has to be Rookie of the Year immediately. I think.
Yeah.
Sure, if he's a little bit, if he shows promise, but he clearly just isn't there yet, you have to sit there and go, okay, that's fine. But I think that has to be the expectation. You have to expect him to come out and just immediately succeed with the weapons around him. And, I mean, I guess we'll see if it happens. It's the type of thing where there's a lot of rookie quarterbacks who come into the league, and we think they're sure things, and then they're really not, including Bryce Young last year. Like, it's just, it's clearly just a sign that, I mean, it's a coin flip at the end of the day, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but I mean, Bryce Young was never the same level of prospect that Caleb Williams was. I mean, there's been conversations. I mean, I've watched a lot of drafts, podcasts, and content over the last couple months, and there's been some people who watch a lot more college film than I do, who have put Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniels all above what Bryce Young was last year. Not all number 1 picks are created equal.
Yeah.
People have talked about Caleb Williams more in line with the Trevor Lawrence or the Andrew Lucks of the world. That's kind of the bar that we're looking at for him. That's a lot of pressure, but it also means, like, yes, that is
I think he's ready for it. Yeah, I think he's ready for it. I think so too. Yeah, I mean, I think he knows that's going to be the case. He's known that was going to be the case since, for however long at this point, 2 or 3 years that we've been talking about this guy.
Probably 2 years, especially after last season.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty well known that he was going to go first overall. He's being named with people like Trevor Lawrence, like Andrew Luck. I think, for the most part, it doesn't feel... If I were him, I think he knows what he's getting into, is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, we've talked about the whole personality concerns thing on, like, other episodes of the podcast, and, like, it's like, I don't even want to give them time of day, because they're complete and utter garbage.
I mean, I don't agree with everything he says. I will say that. There are a few things that I'll read and go... it kind of gives me a bit of a red flag, but I don't know.
What kind of stuff?
I don't even remember anymore. This would have been months ago, but like it's just I don't know. It's small enough that I don't care.
In a bad light.
Yes, and I also think most NFL prospects are fairly confident, even if he's just the only one who's saying it. Like. I think it's just the difference of maybe it's the fact that I don't like how much he puts out there. Maybe it's that because I'm not a huge fan of that in. Although maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm talking on my ass. Who knows? Don't listen to me. I'm a
I don't know.
dumbass.
I mean, I think the two things that I heard were A, he doesn't want to play, like he'll choose to go back to college, which we talked about.
Yeah.
And that obviously didn't happen. And then there was the part about the rumor about him wanting a stake in ownership in the team that he gets drafted to.
Yeah.
But I think that was just a rumor because we haven't heard literally anything
Yeah, that's true.
other than the rumor when it came. Like, I think all of it is just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
It's people want to knock down a guy because he, like, the stuff I see is always, like, he paints his nails and he cried after he lost to Washington.
That's the stuff that I don't care about. Yeah, that's, like... like, who cares?
That's literally a non-issue, if not a positive, especially in the case of, like, crying after a loss. You want guys like that who care about team success versus guys who, like, one of the reasons we see top talents flame out in the NFL is because they don't care and they don't go to meetings. Like, look at Johnny Manziel, right?
Yeah.
Like, guy has all the talent in the world, but he couldn't care about football and he's going to go out and party instead.
Well,
right?
now
Like,
he's
I'd
apparently
rather have
making
guy
a
like
golf
Caleb Williams who
career.
cares.
I don't know if you heard about that. I think I saw that like
I
a
didn't
week
hear
or
about
two.
that.
He's trying to. It was a headline. He pretty much came out and said that he wants to make the PGA by like. What was the date? He set like 2032 or something like that. He's giving himself a lot of time, but all the comments were like, "Same, bro." Me too.
Not gonna happen.
Well, I mean, who knows?
Not gonna happen.
I don't think any of us have seen him golf, so.
That's true. Maybe he's
maybe
got a
he's
special secret talent.
Yeah, maybe he's just insane with a putter. Maybe that's what he was doing in college the whole time.
Well, I don't know about that. I think there's rumors to the contrary on that one. If we want to move on to the number 2 pick with the Washington Commanders, Simon, who do the Commanders have taking it to?
They got Jaden Daniels, the person we just talked about. Potential. Some people saying he's better than Caleb Williams, but
Which is not right.
yeah.
There's people
Well,
being contrarian.
yeah. Well, yeah. And this one's a bit more interesting to me because there's been a lot of conversation and a lot of things coming out of the Washington Commanders camp in the last little bit about Jaden Daniels. It seemed like they weren't fully on the same page about certain things. I thought I heard something about Jaden Daniels not being too happy about pretty much being grouped in with a bunch of other prospects or something.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Like, it's...
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like if you're going to group all the stuff we've heard about Caleb Williams as smoke and mirrors, I feel like this is kind of a similar thing. Like, who gives a shit?
Yes, it's a very minor thing.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen and heard about Jaden Daniels, he seems like a very athletic player. He seems like another type of quarterback where it's pretty much assured that he will succeed at the next level. I think Washington's getting a pretty good quarterback. I mean, I don't think it's a surprise that they're going to go QB here. I think we've known this for a good while now.
Yeah.
They weren't very happy with how things were going with Sam Howell. I think, and obviously they traded him as well. But it's just, I don't think this is too much of a surprise. I think the one thing that could change here, I don't know. Again, I'm talking on my ass here. I could imagine the order of Drake May and Jaden Daniels. I don't know if there's any conversation on them swapping potentially between 2 and 3, but I don't hate this pick. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think the weird thing is, the thing for me that I always try to watch out for is switches in consensus draft order after the college season has already ended. And the big one I looked to for this was with Zach Wilson, where for a long time, Trevor Lawrence was the consensus number 1, forever in that draft. He'd been the consensus number 1 for that draft since he was about 15 years old. The consensus number 2, however, to go to the Jets for a long time was Justin Fields. And then people start watching Zach Wilson tape and they go, oh, maybe this BYU kid has got it. They start seeing the throw from his pro day is crazy. And I think you just start hyping yourself up to a certain extent.
Simon-style scouting right
basically
there.
Nothing. Yeah, and it's like, that's really interesting. Now, I don't necessarily think the same is happening with Jaden Daniels. because unlike Zach Wilson, Jaden Daniels plays in the SEC. He doesn't get the benefit of playing against weaker competition like Zach Wilson did at BYU. Um, Jaden Daniels is more athletic, is more multi-talented, is a better thrower of the football, can handle himself better under pressure. Um, I do think it's interesting, though, that for a long time, Drake May was the consensus number two, and that kind of flip-flopped. Um, I wonder if it will have a similar trajectory to where it's like, man, people just overthought it. But I do think part of the reason it's flip flopped is because it's come out like the Commanders are like this is their guy. They like Daniels over May. In terms of my opinion on that, I do think they're pretty. I think Daniels has a higher floor than May. May has a higher ceiling. From everything that I've seen and heard, where May will make crazier plays and has higher highs, better highlights. Seems to have more arm talent, but he also just makes like boneheaded mistakes where he'll just like completely dirt like a 5-yard curl, and it's like what the hell happened. Where Jane Daniels is more consistent, and you've seen him like have a lot of improvement. Right, he was at Arizona State to start his career. Didn't exactly do very much over there. Not the best situation. Then he comes over to LSU and kind of lights the world on fire, wins the Heisman. That's a lot of progression for a career, and it's really interesting to kind of track that. I don't know. I think it's kind of just what you're looking for in terms of a quarterback, and obviously the Commanders prefer the guy with the higher floor, and I can't necessarily say I fault them for that. I do think it's interesting how the consensus has switched, though.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of just stylistically, I feel like the New England Patriots would be more inclined to take a guy with a higher floor than someone like you mentioned, Drake May. Not necessarily the safest quarterback at times. Very different to what you would have gotten out of a guy like Mac Jones in previous years and stuff like that, right? He's not going to be your check down artist. He's going to be your I'm looking deep 90% of the time. Like that type of quarterback,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, it's definitely in my head I'm just thinking that's a very big switch for the Patriots. Maybe it's just a sign that they know that that check down guy doesn't work when the name on the back of the jersey isn't Brady. And I think
Yeah. Well, it's not necessarily the Patriots' choice either. They're kind of just
yes,
having to
yes.
go with whatever's left,
That's
right?
true.
Like it's very much a Commander's choice
Which I
in
mean,
terms of who they want.
yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is why there's been rumors about the Patriots trading down.
Yeah, no, I believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, we could. Do you want to move on here?
Yeah, we can move on to the Patriots because I assume they're taking Drake May.
They're taking Drake
in this
May.
mock draft, and
Yeah.
those conversations kind of go hand in hand. And you kind of talked about this. I do think if we want to combine the last two, I do think it's very similar in terms of like the Bears are a bit of an outlier because they traded for that number one pick, where their situation is actually really good. And I think for quarterback especially, situation defines things a lot more than anything else. Part of
Yeah.
why Mahomes is so good is because he was able to go to a situation that had Tyreek Hill and Andy Reid. It's not that Mahomes isn't talented, and because obviously he's the most talented quarterback we've probably ever seen, but having people around him who could learn how to hone that talent, like at Texas Tech, he had a losing record, right? Like
Yeah.
that's because he had Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury had a losing record with Patrick Mahomes in college, right? It is about the situation around you to a certain extent.
That guy was
Um,
an NFL head
but-
coach.
Yeah, it's still crazy. But the Commanders and the Patriots are not good situations. And I think, Simon, I'll ask you this. Do you think, because the Patriots roster is probably one of the worst in the league, right? Like,
Yeah.
just looking at it top to bottom, not very good. Do you
Big
think
no-no.
it's smart to take a quarterback when you have,
Ooh.
like, literally nothing around to help him? Or do you wait and try to take that later when you have a better roster?
I think it just completely depends on the mentality going into this season. If I'm the Patriots and I'm taking Drake May, I mean, if you're going into it thinking that he's going to be the thing that completely changes everything for your team, and this season you're instantly going to contend because you found your quarterback, you can't be doing that. Like that's not going to work out at all. I think if you go into the season, you take Drake May here, and you go into the year, honestly, letting him compete with a veteran for even for that number. I think they have Brissett now, right? Like even just letting
Yep.
if even if it comes down to it, letting May sit behind Brissett for a year because your team sucks, because you just want to let
Yeah.
him get used to an NFL environment. I don't hate that. Like that's a situation. I
No,
know a
neither do
lot
I.
of Drake May lovers are gonna hate me saying that because I know a lot of people are very high on this kid, but it absolutely is the type of thing. Who the hell is he gonna be throwing to this year? Like it's just.
Yeah, I don't think I can name a single Patriots.
I was gonna say I was gonna look up a depth chart, but I was like, no, I won't cheat here. I seriously don't know if I could name a single receiver. It's just
Yeah.
like I don't know. It's not a good situation at all. I don't hate it. Like to actually answer your question, I don't hate taking a quarterback when you really have nothing else. I just think you have to do it right. I don't think you can throw him to the wolves because if you throw him to the wolves, you're going to get every other failed quarterback prospect in existence because that's what happens, right? But if you go
Yeah,
into it thinking you have a guy who will be good down the road, let's let him be good down the road.
Yeah.
Then things will go good. But
especially with a guy who's boomer bust like Drake May,
yeah,
where it's like there is high end talent, but there's also like quite a few red flags
yeah,
in terms of some of the stuff that he struggled with. You're looking at a top 3 receiver core of Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, KJ Osborne. Not great.
I was gonna say that's like
I don't know.
my Madden Madden depth chart when I'm
Yeah.
trading when I traded everybody away for picks.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to. Speaking of rosters that aren't very good, I don't know if
Yeah.
we want to move on to pick number 4.
Oh yeah, let's do it. I mean, it's the Arizona Cardinals.
Who
This
the
one,
Cardinals are.
I feel like this one's basically been confirmed as well. It feels like it's. I've been hearing this for a while. They get their new Fitzgerald, Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals. I think. I mean, people have talked about him as arguably one of the best players in this draft. Just who, probably the best player who isn't a quarterback.
regardless of position.
Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
just. I mean, it makes sense. They obviously they don't have a lot going over there. Kyler Murray has not really had a good weapon over there since DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, sure he's had what's his name, speedy guy, Hollywood. Like
Yeah.
he had
Not
him for a
anymore.
little bit, yeah. But it's just I don't know. When I look at this roster, I think it's pretty much Kyler Murray and that's it. And even Kyler Murray has had given us reasons to doubt him at times. I mean, this is very much an important season, I think, for Kyler Murray's career. I mean, I know he has that big deal at this point. I don't know how long he's on that deal off the top of my head, but yeah, but at least to me, this is kind of a boomer bust year for Kyler Murray. He needs to have a good year because I don't think he had a very good year last year after coming back from injury. At least I don't remember him being anything too special. When you pay for an athletic
I
quarterback,
mean, I don't
like
think you can blame him.
no, I'm not necessarily saying I'm
when you
blaming
have
him.
that team around.
I'm
I don't think you can blame
saying
him.
if you're gonna give him a weapon like Marvin Harrison Jr., he better perform.
Yeah, or at least Marvin Harrison, not necessarily even in the win column, because
Sure.
I think that's a little out
Yeah.
out of the picture for.
I just want to
think it's
see
just like
something that
Marvin Harrison has a good rookie season.
I just want to see something that makes me feel better about that contract that Kyler Murray currently has.
Yeah, so he's under contract until 2029. So
Jeez.
I think he's locked in for a while.
Oh, you better hope
Which
he
isn't a bad,
performs.
which isn't a bad thing. Which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because I do think the Cardinals, because the one thing you say this is pretty much locked in. The only other thing, which we can directly parlay this into what ESPN has going on next, but because the only other thing that I think could happen with this pick is that they trade down, because
Yeah.
that's been a lot of the conversations. Because a lot of these teams need quarterback, and JJ McCarthy has been looped into kind of because I think there's been a top 3, which is the people are likely going to go 1, 2, 3. It's the Williams, it's the May, it's the Jaden Daniels, and then you have your tier 2 guys of McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. And McCarthy has kind of risen to the top of that list and has been projected to go in the top 5 to someone trading up, like the Broncos, like the Vikings. And that's kind of where the conversation has been around this Cardinals pick, because, I mean, you look at what they did last year. They traded down from 3 last year so that the Texans could take Will Anderson, right? Who's to say they won't do that again and just keep building up picks down the road? But who knows? If they stick and pick Marvin Harrison, that is a great pick. They get one of the most talented players in the draft, who in a year without as many talented quarterbacks probably could have gone number 1.
Yeah.
Right?
No, absolutely.
Great situation for him to go to. Great that the young wide receiver would have a very talented quarterback. I kind of disagree with the Kyler Murray boom or bust thing. I think he has proven himself. I just think he's never had a good team.
That's fair. Yeah.
Like,
no, I just think
there were a couple of years in there where he where obviously they had some great starts to seasons, but he was also dealing with Cliff Kingsbury.
Oh, sure.
As his coach.
Yeah, that's fair.
Where they would completely tank the latter half of the season after starting 7-1 or whatever.
And I'm not trying to argue that it's entirely his fault. I just mean he's finally getting. If this is the year where he's finally getting a lot of things to go his way. He's getting a lot of decent weapons. He's getting a lot of, even if like you pointed out, it doesn't have to mean wins. I just want to have a reason to not think of that contract as the worst thing I've ever seen, because he does not have a pretty contract.
I don't think it is.
Well, it's a lot of money.
The contract is fine. I think the contract of the year, it's a quarterback. You're going to pay him a lot of money.
Sure, I
it's
guess.
Absolutely fine. I don't know. It's like, in comparison to a lot of other quarterbacks, I don't think it's all that bad. Like,
I just mean, cool. You're
for
making a lot of money. Show me why I paid you that money. Is more my logic when it comes to Kyler Murray.
The big extension doesn't even kick in until it hasn't even kicked in until this year.
Oh,
yeah.
I actually didn't know that.
He only got paid $16 million as a cap hit last year.
Oh,
this is 2024 is the year where it finally kicks in and it balloons.
Yeah.
But it's still he is still, in terms of just pure talent, a top 10 quarterback in the league. He just hasn't had the cast around him to show that.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a Kyler Murray thing. I think it's just he's getting a weapon he hasn't had since DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
And that is very nice to have.
Do you want to keep
it's something
moving here?
that the Cardinals, I think, have been trending in the right direction for a while.
Yeah.
And hopefully not hopefully as a Seahawks fan. Hopefully they suck at Marvin Harrison. But I don't
That's
care
a
as
good
much
point.
about the Cardinals because they don't matter. Anyways, if we want to move on to the number 5 pick,
Yeah.
held by the Chargers, but I don't think that's how ESPN has it turning out.
No, ESPN has them trading down with the Vikings, which has the Vikings obviously getting number 5. The Chargers get number 11, number 23, number 108, plus a third-round pick in 2025. So they're pretty much just getting a haul, and they're still going to get a pick just outside of the top 10 with that. Not a bad deal for the Chargers in this situation.
Yeah.
I'm going to quickly scroll down and see who they end up taking with that number 11, considering we're not even going to talk.
Latham.
Yeah, they're going to end up. So they go offensive tackle, which is a pretty good choice.
J.C. Latham is a bit of an interesting choice at 11.
Is he?
But
I don't really know who he is, but
he's
I will not.
projected in
I will
the
not.
late 20s.
Oh, okay. I will not pretend to know a lot about the offensive tackles of this draft, all right? But it's just I just more mean stylistically, I don't hate that. I feel like Herbert has needed a bit more protection for a while now. I mean, he needs a bit more of everything at this point, but I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt.
There is better options, but some people are really high on him.
Yeah.
Anyways, that is a very good deal.
That's definitely not. That's not the important part of this. The Vikings get number 5, and in this, they get J.J. McCarthy, their Kirk Cousins replacement.
Yep. And, I mean, we talk a lot about situation. I do think if you're getting to throw to Justin Jefferson, you're going into a good situation. Kevin O'Connell is a good coach. The Vikings have been a good team over the last few years, and I don't think they've gotten all that much worse. They've kind of stayed level. That's a really good receiving core with not only Jefferson, but Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson. You got Aaron Jones. The one thing with JJ McCarthy that people are worried about is the fact that, well, at Michigan, he didn't exactly throw the ball very much.
Yeah.
Michigan was a
He
very
had,
run-heavy team.
well, he just had an insane team around him, just in general.
Yeah, and they leaned so heavily on the running attack that um, there's just not a huge sample size in terms of showing what he can do. It's like the plays are there, but you have to look for them a lot more. Um, and a lot of the conversation that I've heard on a lot of the draft podcasts that I listen to is like, is it a can he not do it, or has he just not been given the opportunity to show that he can do it? It's like just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean he can't
Is
do
he a
it.
system quarterback?
Yeah, that's the tough thing. I mean, we
Yeah.
we don't even know what he is
Yeah, exactly.
because they just didn't give him the chance to throw the ball very much. Because you see high level throws from him, but it's just like we don't know what that looks like on a. It's a very much a gamble.
Sure.
And that's the reason he's not in that top tier. Um, but I mean, like everything else you look for, like I mean, obviously, winner at the highest level, winning the national championship game. It's not necessarily just a quarterback thing, but it's not unimportant. Um, and I do think at least going to the Vikings, like that's a pretty good situation.
Yes.
Like
No, absolutely.
he's honestly being given a better chance to succeed just going there versus a Drake May or Jane Daniels going to the Commanders or the Patriots. Like that's what he has going in his favor, even if he is a worse prospect than those two. And is he worth a trade up to 5? I don't know. But quarterbacks are a valuable asset, and even if he's like 20th, 25th player on your board overall in terms of talent, because he's a quarterback, he's going to get bumped up a lot.
Yeah. No, and I don't disagree with you on any of that. I mean, he absolutely is a. It's an interesting choice. Like you mentioned, we don't really know what we're going to get with him. But we'll see what the Vikings get. I mean, like you mentioned, they still have a lot of really good weapons over there. There's a reason Kirk Cousins was able to do as much as he was able to. It's still pretty much the same team as far as I can remember. So, I mean,
Yep,
you're
not a
pretty
lot of
much just sliding him. I mean, sure, it's it might not be as good in dominance as he had in Michigan. But
no.
at least offensively, he has all the weapons to make it work. It's just like you pointed out, can he do it? Can he make those insane throws to Jefferson? Can he pull all of these things off? Like we just don't know.
Yep.
There's a lot of question marks around him, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I think we can move on.
Yep.
We've already been talking for 30 minutes, so I think through the last 5, maybe
we can speed round.
speed round. Yeah, New York Giants taking Malik Neighbors at 6 is what ESPN has here. I mean, yeah, I'll let you go first on this one.
it's not. I mean, the one thing about this top 10 is that it is very chalky in terms of like, oh boy, top 3 quarterbacks go top 3. Then you get a run in receivers. Then you get an offensive tackle. It's all pretty the same. I don't think I've seen the Giants been mocked not to draft a receiver in like any of these. Because I mean, quarterback, like if a quarterback falls, maybe if you get a Jaden Daniels or a Drake May like inexplicably falling throughout the draft, and nobody picks them up, you can see the Giants taking them. But when you've got a receiver core of Darius Slayton, pretty good, but then you got like Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Isaiah McKenzie. It's not exactly the most talented,
and it's the same one that they've had
couple,
for a while now. At least at the upper half.
except for Jalen.
Yeah.
Yeah, except for Jalen Hyatt.
Yeah.
Obviously coming in last year. But it is a lot of like second round guys who haven't really like they're good role players, but they're not going to like light the world on fire. Malik Neighbors has the potential to do that. A lot of that comes in terms of like he's the quick shifty guy in this class where yards after catch is going to be a big thing with him. He's going to get open fast. He's going to be an explosive playmaker. It's the kind of thing where it's most boards have Harrison kind of in a tier of his own, and then Neighbors and Odunze flip-flop 2-3. I'm more of an Odunze guy myself, although I may be biased because I've seen a lot more of him. But not to say that Neighbors doesn't have talent and like either one of those guys, you get like pretty surefire talent, and New York has a spot where they need them.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you. I do like the idea of them taking a quarterback because of the fact that I'm not the biggest fan of Daniel Jones at this point. I don't think many people are, but they do have him being paid quite a bit of money at this point, I think. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like at this point you're just giving him. It's not like he's had a lot of weapons in his time with the Giants. It's not like you've necessarily given him all that you can to see if he's really got it. And giving him Malik Neighbors in a situation like this, like you pointed out, I think it'll be good for him. I think you're really giving him a potential top receiver for the first time in his career that I can think of. Like, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
can't. I can't really think of a good receiver that
Giants
they really had
receivers
there.
have not been good since probably OBJ, and
Yeah.
OBJ at his peak did not cross over with Daniel Jones.
So there you go. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? You're just giving him a better chance to succeed. I don't hate it. I think it's a good pick for them. It is probably their biggest need. So we'll see how it goes for them. I think it's probably going to be accurate on this one. We can move on, though, to the Tennessee Titans. At 7, they take Joe Alt, offensive tackle, Notre Dame.
Which is another one where it's like very chalky. Like Joe Alt to the Titans is kind of like, oh yeah, that's another one we really just check off the box, and it's like they need offensive linemen, and Joe Alt is the best one available.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any like you can't go any further than that. They've got the quarterback. They're like at this point, the top 4 are going to be gone, and you're probably like the Titans. Either way, I think are committed to seeing what they have in Will Levis. They just signed Tony Pollard, and there's no good running backs that go this high, anyways. Receiver, you could potentially have seen them taking one of the top 3 that are left, but they signed Calvin Ridley, so that's probably a sign they're not going to do that. Offensive line is where there's issues. Their starting tackles right now are Dylan Radins and Nicholas Petit-Friere. Not exactly
Not exactly
inspiring,
household names.
especially with your young quarterback. Like, you want to do your best to protect your young quarterback. Joe Alt's the kind of guy where you just kind of lock him in one side and forget about him for 10, 15 years in terms of how he's been talked about.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you want an offensive lineman to be.
Oh, yeah.
It's another one that's a big no-brainer, just in terms of positional need and the fact that there is a guy that's top 10 worthy right there. Like, there's a deep offensive tackle class, and Joe Alt is the best one. So he goes in 7.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, makes sense to me. I don't disagree with any of that. Do you want to move on to Atlanta?
Sure.
All right. So at number
This
8.
I think is where the ESPN has like the most interesting deviation from
Okay.
consensus.
Because I will admit, I did have to ask you how to pronounce his name on this one before the podcast, because I haven't heard this guy's name before, actually. Liatu Latu, right? Right?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping he makes sure that I remember his name at the NFL level with the Falcons here, because I mean it makes sense. It's an edge guy. They're taking someone who is just going to make their defense better. But I don't. Where you said this is a pretty big deviation from a lot of other mock drafts. Where is he normally?
About the 20s.
Oh wow. Okay, so this would be quite a reach.
Well, it would be no. Okay, 20s is it's like I've seen him be picked anywhere from about 15, 14 to
Okay.
like.
Well, still a reach.
It's not necessarily as big a reach as you might think.
Okay.
It's just interesting. Most people have Dallas Turner going here. It's not a positional deviate. Like Atlanta's probably going to go edge rusher, just because you look at their team and it's like, because think about the top 7 players that we've had go offense, 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 offense. This is the first defensive player off the board at number what is this 8?
8. Yeah.
It's a very offensive heavy draft, and so they're going to take the best defensive player available if you're Atlanta, because you've obviously had an insanely stacked offense in terms of skill players for the last 3 or 4 years. The receivers you had, you've got Drake London, you've got Bijan, you've got Kyle Pitts, you've got Kirk Cousins.
You got all the weapons.
Your
already.
offense is set.
Yeah.
Your offensive line is good. Your offense is set. Now it's time to build up that defense. Um, so that's why they look to edge rusher. Dallas Turner's been the guy who I've mainly seen here, but I think there have been people who like Liatu Latu better. Um, and they are kind of the 1-2 guys in terms of edge rusher that I've seen. You throw a Jared Verse in there um, sometimes, but those two guys have been kind of 1-2. I think the pros for Latu are he's a lot more refined in terms of he's got a bigger skill set. He's not just a one trick pony. Like he's got a lot of pass rush moves. Really shows up on tape. Where he's really varied in the stuff he can do. Biggest red flag and big reason that he's not being projected at 8, injury history. He has been very injured. He was actually forced to medically retire at a certain point in his career because of how bad his injuries were. He came back and he was able to produce this season, but obviously teams are going to be scared off by that. Big comparison people make to that, however, is Jalen Phillips, who had the same kind of thing happen, where he had to medically retire, came back, had a good end to his college career, but fell to the 20s to the Dolphins and has now been spectacular. So you wonder if a similar kind of thing is going to happen to Latu, where he gets a little bit undervalued because of his injury, and then goes out and lights the world on fire.
Yeah.
But obviously, no team is going to want to take a guy if he's going to be injured your entire rookie contract and not going to be able to contribute.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely not what you want. I like I said, for fit, I love it. I think it makes sense. I think at the very least they need to go defense, like you pointed out. It's just gonna come down to who. ESPN obviously taking a bit more of a controversial pick, but it still makes sense, at least for the Falcons. Yep. We can move on though to the Chicago Bears. We already I don't know if we really touched on it. Obviously, Bears at number 9. And ESPN has them taking a receiver in Rome Odunze. And I think you pointed it out earlier, the fact that you're fairly high on this guy because he went to Washington. So I'll let you just take this one.
Yeah, he is. So I've watched him more than any other player in the draft just because, I mean, like, I saw him live. I'm a Washington fan, so I've watched lots of Washington games. And I mean, man, like, it's crazy how good this guy is. Like, it's actually insane. I love him so much as a prospect. He has this, like, intensity for the game. Like, you just see it where he's giving his all every single play. You absolutely love to see that. He is a spectacular contested catch guy. Literally, like, Michael Penix would throw these like prayer deep balls up to him, and it would just fit. Like, it would be a great throw by Penix, but an even better catch by Odunze. He's not open necessarily when some of these balls get thrown, but he still makes every single catch. It's like you just know when the ball goes up to him that it's going to be brought down. He is the perfect kind of like dominant X receiver that could instantly become a number 1. Like, if I'm looking for like I know you've got lots of good offensive talent in this draft, especially with like some of the quarterbacks that go. I know it would probably, especially if Rome Odunze pops off in Chicago, the award would probably go to Caleb Williams, but I still kind of see him as a dark horse, like, offensive rookie of the year candidate, just with how insanely talented he is. And it's just like he just catches the ball, like, literally every time. You would have teams double covering him, triple covering him. Doesn't matter. Every time Penix put up the ball to him, he would come down with it. And the one thing that I will say, it's just like he's not necessarily a guy who you're going to dink and dunk down the field with. He's not a Malik Neighbors where you're just going to throw it to him on a slant and watch him, like, run down the field and score a 90-yard touchdown off of that after being thrown a 5-yard pass. He's the kind of guy
he's
where
your deep threat.
You look and there's a lot more 40-yard throws than there is 10-yard throws. And I think teams need that. Yeah. And to be able to have in a first year a receiving core of Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and Keenan Allen, like, you're just setting Caleb Williams up for so much success at that point. I love this kid coming out of Washington. I think he's going to be spectacular with everything that I've seen. Obviously, the one big thing that people worry about with contested catch guys is like why are their catches contested because they can't get open. I don't think that's necessarily the case with him. I think it's just like when he's in those situations, he's able to make the most of them when
Yeah.
he's not open. It's not that he can't get open. But I think he's going to be great. I think he's pretty much as much of a flawless receiver prospect as you can get.
Yeah. I think. I don't disagree with any of that. I think it makes sense for the Bears to take a wide receiver here. You're just adding to the weapons you already have. I mean, you're joining a very experienced wide receiver group. It's very loaded. He's obviously going to be third on the depth chart behind DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. And I mean, how that works.
Long.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're that high on him.
I would not be shocked if he. I would be shocked if he hasn't passed Keenan Allen by week like 5,
Okay.
and I wouldn't be surprised if he's their number one option by the end of the season.
Wow, okay. Put that on a graphic.
Yeah.
Send that out to all of the world.
He's within a couple years he's going to be a top 10 receiver in it.
Okay. I don't know if I have anything else to add to that. I don't have a crazy prediction. But number 10, New York Jets, ESPN has them going with Brock Bowers, which is just another guy to help Aaron Rodgers out here. It's going to make their offense just that much more talented. They've already got quite a few weapons for Rodgers to work with, but it's just going to help him out just a little bit more.
Yeah. And I mean, it is kind of an obvious pick, but the one thing that I would say in opposition to that is just like potentially going offensive tackle. You just pick one of the better ones that are left, whatever you fancy, whether it's an Olu Fashanu, whether it's a Thalise Fuaga, any one of these guys who are out there. Like that's kind of the other thing that I've seen mocked to them as an offensive tackle. Just because you have a pretty decent offensive line right now, but those guys are very old in Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. So you would want a guy who's younger, and you just want to get as much protection for Rodgers after what happened last year.
Yeah.
But obviously Brock Bowers is a pretty special player. He's one of those kind of like tight ends. It's not really a tight end in terms of how talented he is with the ball, where it's like that label feels almost like a little bit derogatory to the kind of talent he has. But I don't know. Like it's the kind of thing where it's like I don't think they can go wrong here, whether they pick Bowers or an offensive tackle. I like the pick. I like the pick. I think by doing this, you're saying you're trying to maximize it this year specifically. Whereas offensive tackle, you're like, we're investing more in the future for when our 35 to 37-year-old offensive tackles inevitably retire in the next couple of years.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think it would be smart to potentially go tackle here. Because, I mean, like you pointed out, A-Rod did go down pretty bad last year. And if that happens again, you're just... I mean, the same thing's going to happen. You're screwed. You do not have... I mean, even now, you don't have a backup who's going to slide into that spot, really. I don't know. I don't know what the Jets do if he goes down. So I wouldn't hate if they went tackle, but, I mean, purely off of best player available at this point, I mean, Brock Bowers. It makes sense. Like you pointed out, he's the type of guy who can really do it all. He's going to... If you take him, you're not going to... It's not a bad pick. But I don't think it's a bad pick if you go offensive tackle either. I think you're totally right on that one. So I don't disagree with you. But that's the entire list, or at least as much as we are going to go over. I don't want to go through. I don't know about you, but whole top 30. And in my own head, I was thinking to myself, do I have enough time to put this out by Thursday? And the answer is probably no. So so to all the people out there, this might be a funny thing to watch back on when Brock Bowers goes number one or whatever the hell ends up happening that blows everybody's mind.
It's more likely he goes number like 25. So I've seen him slip that far.
Whatever ends up happening. Yeah. It'll probably be funny to watch this when it comes out and just laugh at us being complete idiots. Like when Odunze goes undrafted and Caleb Williams inevitably falls all the way down to like pick 15. It'll be great. It'll be great. That's my prediction. Put
Oh
that
yeah.
on a graphic. Caleb Williams to the Seahawks. Let's make it happen.
Let's go.